he started in Asia. We're gonna take a bit 5 years to 15 years ago. He started in Asia in 2005, and then he moved about to Malaysia, and then he moved about to Hong Kong, and then he's been responsible in Macau, and then he has been given another opportunity about around 2016 to be head of division in some countries in Africa, and then starting 2019, he's been the ambassador for the European Union to Indonesia and Brunei Darussalam. So without further delay, I believe Pak Vincent, Mr. Ambassador, the floor is yours.
Thanks very much indeed, Vishal, for the introduction, and thank you very much indeed to the School of Government and Public Policy for inviting me today to speak to you and with you for this seminar about EU-Indonesia Green Partnership. And the second part of the seminar is about research and education cooperation between EU and Indonesia. And that part will be led by Dr. Susanne Renzo of the EU project called Euro Access, which has the goal to promote education and research linkages between the European Union and third countries. Now, I've been in the ante-chamber, so to say, before this we started. Already been talking to your staff and to some of your postgraduate fellow students, and I note already that you are a pretty well-connected group of people, some of whom, in fact, studied or spent some time doing research in my home country, which is the Netherlands. And one of your colleagues even studied at the university, which is my alma mater, so to say. And that is the university, Radboud University in the Netherlands, in Nijmegen, the Netherlands. And I greet therefore particularly Ibu Dian this morning, who studied there too. We have a fairly not too large a group to have an informal discussion, so I will speak a little bit briefly, I will try, and so that after that we have some time for debate. The Green Partnership, very important, but of course you probably, but certainly me as a diplomat, we have another big worry on our mind at present, and that is the Russia-Ukraine crisis, where very, very regrettably, over the past weeks, we have seen, or months even, we have seen a gradual build-up of tension, and the day before yesterday, we saw a major escalation of the crisis caused by Russia. So this is enormously worrying for Europe, for the European continent as a whole, for the European Union. Our security is at stake, our stability is at stake. Our easternmost member states feel they are at risk. They are exposed to an outburst of the crisis, feel exposed even literally themselves in terms of their security. And that is something that none of us really had expected, let alone want, but expected to happen in Europe anno 2022. We thought we'd passed that station. quite a while ago. And this is not a battle between West and East. Sometimes I read that in the media, in analyses. It's got nothing to do with that, because the East, many Eastern countries have, as much as we have, condemned what Russia has been doing and what President Putin did 2 days ago. So this is not West versus East. This is about one country, in a very, very firm view, flouting international order, absolutely rejecting international law in a number of very fundamental areas having to do with sovereignty, territorial integrity, respect for borders, internationally agreed borders, etc. It started some time ago, of course, a number of years with Crimea, invasion there, plus the provinces that have now been recognized by Russia. And even before that, of course, it started in Georgia. Let's not forget that, with 2 provinces there having been annexed, basically, by Russia against any principle of law and rule of law. So a major worry, a major uncertainty for our peoples and for our economy. War causes disruption, evidently. If it was to come, let's not run away with the facts, but a war would cause disruption, economic, social, people to people, cause death. And that's not what we want. So we very much continue to work on diplomacy as the European Union, together with our partners, and in order to bring about a negotiated, a diplomatic solution to this a totally unnecessary and unprovoked crisis. That is our position. We will work for it, and we will engage countries in other parts of the world, including Indonesia, evidently. You may have seen the statements made by President Widodo, by the Foreign Minister, Retno Marsudi. We feel very much comforted and supported by that. This is not about taking sides, East versus West or North-South. This is about respect for international order and rule of law. And we know, and we see that also from the statements made, that Indonesia is firmly behind that principle with the respect for international order, international law. So I thought I had to start with that to get it off my chest, so to say, before we reach the topic. But we can come back to it, evidently, in the discussion. Very brief word about the EU-Indonesia partnership, not the green partnership, but the partnership. We have see each other very much as like-minded, Indonesia and the EU, supporters of multilateralism, the rule-based world order, UN, and all the other conventions, institutions, formats that go with it. Very much interested in establishing and expanding a broader and deeper relation with Indonesia. Why? First of all, because of the like-mindedness, evidently. Secondly, because of the size of your country, the size of your population, the size of your economy now, and even more, of course, if you look ahead to 2045. And we value Indonesia's role in ASEAN, the biggest member of ASEAN, the key member for ASEAN, and hence our engagement with Indonesia on ASEAN. And we value Indonesia for global goods, the global concerns that we have in common: climate, fighting terrorism, multilateral trade, and biodiversity, quite a broad array of topics where we see eye to eye and work together with Indonesia. And very topically, of course, is Indonesia's place in the international community, highlighted in the past by its strong links with the developing emerging countries, and highlighted today by the presidency of G20 of Indonesia, first time ever, sign of Indonesia having moved onwards and upwards. And I'm sure we're going to see more of that in the future. So it's a very special moment for us to build and extend our cooperation with Indonesia. We have a very strong bilateral agreement, a very broad political agreement ever since 2014. Indonesia was the first country to have such an agreement with us in Asia, in Southeast Asia. We're negotiating a free trade agreement. We call it a bit differently. It's not just free trade, it's more than that. It's economic partnership, comprehensive economic partnership. So it's not just tariffs, about tariffs for goods, but also for services, food and bev, digital services, for instance, and fintech, all of these things. And also a lot about, rules for our economy, on competition, on government procurement, on standards, food safety standards, industrial standards, and the like, in order to really make this not only a trade agreement, but also a partnership, a connection between your economy, Indonesia's economy, and ours for the long run. A rule-based, equal partners, etc. The environment, the green partnership comes into that, because, of course, yes, we have a COVID crisis, we have a Russia crisis, but we also have a green crisis, a climate crisis. And we would be like ostriches sticking our head in the ground if we ignored that. So we have to work together on this green agenda between the two of us. In the broadest sense of the word, first of all, climate. We just had in November the COP26 in Glasgow, and we're going to have the COP27 this year. A lot has to be done by us, by Indonesia, by everybody, and we want to work together with Indonesia to make that happen. What is on the European agenda in that regard? Our policy is moving fast, very profoundly. Our ambition is to be net zero and circular by 2050. Only 30 years from now, frightening. And if you want to be that, of course, you have to start now, because in policy terms, as you know, 30 years for such a structural transformation of your economy is very little time. So we're pushing tremendously hard our domestic policy in all areas, from energy to industry, to construction, buildings, agriculture, transport, road, maritime, aviation, and forest. We're going to plant 3 billion trees in Europe in the next 10 years by 2030. So those of you who were in Europe recently will remember that image well and compare that to the image you will see in 2030. We're planting trees, 3 billion trees to create carbon sink, evidently, but also for sustainable forestry and for a greater use of wood in our economy, in our energy mix, etc. So planting forest for carbon sink, but also for a sustainable, renewable energy. Of course, this change is on our own territory of 27 member states. It's a large territory, 450 million people, and we are about a fifth of the global GDP. In carbon terms, we are much smaller. We're only 8% of global emissions, which goes to show that the 92% that's left, we have to work on that too. We have to reach out to those partners to get them to work on a similar program, not the same, but similar objectives as ours. These are the global objectives of the COP, of the Paris Agreement of a couple of years ago. So, and that's where we work with Indonesia, or many countries do. Just the other day, the UK's special envoy on climate, the chair of the COP26, was here in Jakarta for meetings. John Kerry, the special envoy for climate of the United States, will be visiting Indonesia before too long. And also we will expect to be having yet again top-level EU visitors to Indonesia to talk about this, a partnership on the green. So what are the priorities from our point of view for partnering with Indonesia? First of all, of course, renewable energy. Indonesia's economy, Indonesia's power sector heavily relies on coal. It's cheap. It's readily, plentifully available for Indonesia, but it's also dirty. And so there is no two ways about it, that there is a need for a major fundamental transition away from coal, step by step, towards renewable sources of energy. What does that involve? Of course, first of all, public policy. You have to create the legal order for renewable energy to give it space in the energy mix. You have to create such a legal order and a policy to promote investment in the power sector, but also in industry. At the end of the day, companies have to innovate and green themselves, each and every one of them, in manufacturing, but also in the services sector, of course, where a lot of energy gains, renewable energy opportunities exist. So that is a major priority for us, renewable energy. We're working very closely with government to help get this legal order in place. It is getting there almost, but it will come before too long, and the EU will support Indonesia with some grant money, but particularly we are keen to bring our companies into Indonesia, and we are proud our companies in the renewable energy sector are among the top companies in the world. Lots of experience, lots of know-how, lots of technology available and for Indonesia. So energy is one, renewable energy. Secondly, the forest. Look around yourself in Indonesia and you see, even with an unexpert eye like mine, what riches Indonesia has in terms of forest. Some say there used to be more. Yes, of course. But that's not the point. That is history. We say right now, it's the moment to preserve what you have, make use of the land you have developed for agriculture, for urban manufacturing, for mining, in the best possible way. Increase the intensity of agriculture, of palm oil production, and so that you don't need to cut forest any longer. Create a strong legislation against illegal use of the forest, illegal cutting of trees, and make sure that your trade is sustainable. And through trade, the EU is working together with Indonesia already. We have an agreement, bilateral agreement between us and Indonesia about the trade in legally certified legal timber and furniture. So it's a sort of green lane for this certified legal timber and furniture into the European Union. That is the way to go for us, that we, through our market demand, stimulate sustainable production and supplies from Indonesia. So land use, forestry is a very important part of our discussion already now, and it will remain so. Now, what are we intending to do? What's on the agenda now? I look at my clock also, and I want to stay follow the timing. This year, I do expect quite a lot of attention from the EU for Indonesia. Partly, of course, because of the G20, which will prompt many visits of our top people to Indonesia. But secondly, because we see this year as a kind of linchpin moment in our relations, as an opportunity to use the momentum that we built up over the past couple of years, and particularly last year, in our political relations, to really push the big priorities forward. And the big priorities are our free trade agreement, the comprehensive economic partnership, and secondly, the green agenda. So that is our ambition for this year. That's the KPI against my performance will be assessed by my superiors at the end of next year or in January next year. But I'm very keen to discuss that further with you. Very last point. Calendar years are artificial constructs in time. Life goes on beyond years, and we look forward to a long-lasting political relationship with Indonesia. Let's not forget that next year, G20 presidency will be over, but the ASEAN chairmanship will begin. So we have a period of a good 2 years with a front role for Indonesia in international public policy. Big task for the foreign ministry and for the whole government, of course. This is no piece of cake to do that, but the EU will support Indonesia very strongly in all these areas. Just yesterday, co-hosted by France and the European Union, we had in Paris the forum about the Indo-Pacific cooperation, a new drive for the EU to increase, expand, intensify our cooperation with any country in Asia. It's not exclusive. It's not anti-China. Let me stress that very, very explicitly. It's an offer for cooperation with everybody with whom we share objectives in the areas in which we share those objectives. Now, with Indonesia, we share a lot, so I'm very hopeful that we can make it work. Minister Retno Marsudi was in Paris indeed yesterday, gave a good speech. Look it up on the Kemlu website and see what she says. Of course, she touched on Russia, Ukraine, calling for respect for the rule of law and for de-escalation. But she also spoke forcefully about the need and the possibility of strengthening Asia-Europe cooperation. And we can talk about it a little bit more later on. I stop here. It's 9:31, so I've been very self-disciplined, Pak Vishal, and I've passed the floor back to you.
Thank you, Mr. Ambassador. We managed to get in a few questions, so I hope you're ready for more Q&As. Okay, so yeah, first question comes from Reza. His question is, what are the strategic steps between EU and Indonesia to overcome the threats of climate change? I understand you mentioned a few of the initiatives, but I believe what can we immediately do within the short period of time, say this year and next year?
All right. I think at the global level, of course, the steps are set by the conference, the COP, the Conference of Parties under the UN Framework Convention on Climate, UNFCCC. We had a meeting. We had the Glasgow COP last November. We are going to have the Sharm el-Sheikh and Egypt COP in this November, I believe, or early December. And so Glasgow asked all parties to do more and go deeper in CO2 cuts, because at the end of the day, Glasgow did not produce enough engagement to achieve the fundamental goals by 2030. So we are expected as EU, but also Indonesia, to concretize and make more ambitious and make firmer what we're going to do. So that is a job that we have to do by the end of this year. There'll be lots of discussion between all partners, but including between EU and Indonesia. So that's step one in terms of policy making and target setting. Step two is very much to bite the bullet on the energy transition. There's no, as I said, no two ways about it. For us, for Indonesia, Europe has got coal as well in our energy mix. It's not so much, but as an average, but in certain parts of the EU, certain member states, certain regions in member states, it's still quite high, 25, 30%. Now, that has got to change. That requires investment, that requires turning brown into green with technology, with dismantlement and building something new, pushing solar, wind, everything. And it involves social measures, because the miners and their families, the livelihoods, of course, they will get unemployed. And we have to do something for them to find new employment, to help them reskill in renewable or whatever it is. So that is a big, big job for us, like for everybody else. Also the place of gas. It's a big debate at the moment in Europe. Gas and nuclear power. Are they green energies? Are they not? It's not the same argument for both of them, but some argue this. It's a transition energy, and we need it. We have no other way. And whereas others say no, we can't. This is fooling yourself. So that's the debate now in Europe. Now in Indonesia, you will have not the same, but similar questions. How do your power sector, 60% of your power is produced with coal. That's one fact. Second fact, last year, Indonesia's coal exports created revenue worth a good $26 billion. Now, that's a lot of money. And the finance minister was very green-minded, I know, but she was quite happy that the government coffers made a good earning. So there is in other words, a double dependency on coal for Indonesia, and you can't change that overnight. It's unrealistic. It's impossible even. The country has to live and transition, but you've got to start somewhere. And for us, from our point of view, and if you ask the World Bank in Indonesia, they will say exactly the same, is that you've got to put in place a law or legislation and tariffs, energy tariffs, that favor renewable energy, that make it attractive for investors to invest. They need to see a perspective for their investment, otherwise it makes no sense. Otherwise the shareholders won't be happy. And so Indonesia really needs that legislation in order to boost the renewable sector for the medium term. So far, Indonesia has not achieved its renewable energy targets. It's quite a dip, quite a gap between target, what was the target and what was realized. So something doesn't work, and it's not a criticism, it's just an observation. Something needs to be done to make it work. And I think intuitively all of you will agree that with your sun, with your geothermal, with your hydro potential, it's got to be possible in Indonesia to make this switch in the cities, in the countryside. So that, I think, is going to be key for this coming year. That was in reply to Reza.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Ambassador. My next question. Now we're going to move from the short-term to the long-term goal now. So the question goes, the EU Green Deal is an ambitious and admirable pursuit, but policies often changes a long time because changes leadership can affect those changes. And also, how does EU ensure a long-lasting support for the member states, 27 of them, and the citizen of European Union as well, in the long-term goal for that side?
On the first question, continuity of public policy in a democracy. Governments come, governments go, etc. Few elements. First of all, if you, as far as EU is concerned, if you ignore some extreme views on the far right and on the far left for a moment, which you can, then I think it's fair to say, and objective to say, that green awareness is consensual among politics in Europe. So whether you ask a center-right liberal, a centrist, or a Labour Party social democrat, they will say exactly this. Well, maybe not exactly, but fundamentally the same about the need to go net zero by 2050. They may have different answers in terms of how to do it and so on, different emphases. Social democrats more looking at the social side, possibly. Liberals looking more at the private sector role, but those are differences of degree rather than of principle. So political consensus exists. Secondly, the key is legislation. We have, for the EU as a whole, we adopted, when was it? In 2020, end of 2020. This legal framework, binding legislation for the whole of the EU, committing us to net zero in 2050. And so that's a law, and for the EU, the law can be enforced by the European Commission, our executive branch of government, with fines if necessary, if member states don't do their job. So there's a lot of continuity there. You may say the law can be changed, amendment here or there, theoretically possible, but because of the first thing I mentioned, the political consensus about greening, because of that political consensus, I don't think that is a likely scenario. Third continuity is the people. If you go out in the street in almost anywhere in Europe, and you ask them, this person in the street, for their views or their priorities, what does the government need to deal with, then you will find that 80–90% will commit themselves to green matters in different ways, in different embassies, some stressing urban air quality and getting cars out of the city, others stressing the natural biodiversity, different emphases, but fundamentally this is what people want. And so products, people don't want to buy products that are brown, that cause damage, environmental damage, that contain pesticides, chemicals, and all of that. I mean, much of it has already happened. So we are basically past that station already, but this will continue. It brings us to palm oil, in a sense, important for Indonesia, for Malaysia. Palm oil has a bad reputation in Europe, not amongst everybody, but people, some people feel have negative views about palm oil. What does that mean? First of all, not panic. Secondly, because we can do something about it, and I do think that there is lots of scope to do more, and to make sure that the image of palm oil improves in the public mind, to make sure that we raise sustainability in the sector, and this is all possible. In fact, government is working on it, making progress, not yet perfect, but I do think that we're moving, or the sector is moving in the right direction. I meet a lot of stakeholders from the palm oil sector, government, the NGO side, the smallholders, the large firms. In fact, my landlord here for my office is a palm oil producer. So if we work together, then we can make sure that palm oil continues to be a good, tradable and sustainable crop also for Europe. It is a fact, however, that our standards are changing, our standards are going up, not just for Palmer, for everything. And that is the drift in our politics, the drift in our public opinion in Europe at the moment. Relations amongst the EU-27, how do we support one another? You know, it's essentially it's support. We call it a fair and just transition. And that's what we talk about. It means that our standards are high for in all areas, but it's got to be workable for everybody, which means that the most advanced member states, if it comes economically in general, but also in terms of environmental progress, need to support the member states that have the longest transition to go. I mentioned earlier that some of our member states still have a lot of coal in their energy mix. And those member states, they're mostly, but not exclusively, but mostly in Central Europe, Poland, Czech Republic, Slovakia, Hungary, strong coal presence. They need a helping hand. It's as simple as that. Mostly with finance. Of course, the governments will have to do the job. The industry there will have to do the job. But there will be finance available from the side of the European Union, from the side of the most advanced member states to help them do that job. And we finance that transition at the level of companies, sectors. We also finance the reskilling of people working in the mines right now. Need to find something else to do. They need training, and in order to make a new start in something else and something probably cleaner and healthier than they do now. So that is the challenge we have. But it will work. We have a lot of experience with that sort of financial support and financial transfer from the richer parts of the EU to the emerging parts of the EU, so to say, and so it will work, is my conviction. Thank you.
Yep, thank you, Mr. Ambassador. So one thing I can summarize is that there's a consensus between the political members and the society, and thus it's something I believe Indonesia should be able to adopt. So there's a mutual understanding that green is the only way forward, and that would basically be able to create a long-term sustainable growth and avoid sudden policy changes. Okay, thank you very much, Mr. Vincent. I believe the time is up. But before you go to your next appointment, I believe it's a time for group pictures. Correct me if I'm wrong, team. Yeah. Okay. Let's do group pictures. So everybody, put your smile face on. Yeah. The host, are we good for pictures? Just tell us the cue.
So more people need to switch on their video.
Yeah, correct. Yes, people, don't be shy.
We take pictures, but on one condition, Pak Vishal, that you send me the photo for my tweet.
Definitely, I'll send it to you, and I'll retweet it. Is everybody on? Yes, come on, a few more people. Camera, there you go. So I believe we are all ready. 3, 2, 1, click. Yeah. Thank you. Should we do the next batch as well? Okay, then let's go to the next page. So please be patient. So there's 110 members, so it'll take time for everybody to squeeze in. So, we good? Okay, done. Thank you. So, Mr. Vincent, thank you very much. I shall excuse you to the next session. We'll carry on with Dr. Susan from here.
Well, thank you very much, Pak Vishal and colleagues and dean and lecturers of the School of Government and Public Policy. I enjoyed it. So if you think it's of interest, don't hesitate to contact me again. I wish you success today, and I also an interesting session with Dr. Susanne in just a few seconds, and I wish you success with your studies and also with, of course, your further careers, whether it's in government or in the private sector or as an academic. And so good luck and hope to stay in touch.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
So, ladies and gentlemen, that's a bit too zoom to me. So, ladies and gentlemen, before we carry on further, I'm happy to announce that at the end of the session, there'll be an announcement of the best question. So keep sending your questions. We'll be collecting them. And once we have all the questions at the end of the session, just after Dr. Susan, we will announce who has given the best questions. And also there'll be some links required for you to fill in for data, because there are also going to be certificates sent to you, a physical one, not a digital copy. So please follow all the data required by the team. So Dr. Susan, let me introduce you. Thank you very much. Thank you very much for your patience. Okay, so everybody, we welcome Dr. Susan. We understand that we are 25 minutes over time from the discuss schedule, but that happens. We got a lot of exciting and revoking questions. So Dr. Susan here, she's the Regional Project Director of EURUSES Worldwide, an initiative of the European Commission Directorate General for Research and Innovations. She promotes borderless research, cooperation, and mobility between Europe and the world. So Dr. Susan, the floor is yours. Please carry on.
Thank you so much for the nice introduction. And thank you, of course, for the opportunity to speak to you. Now, I'm following in the big footsteps of the ambassador, and as we've heard, collaboration is key to tackling a lot of the challenges that we're all facing. Of course, climate change is one of the pressing issues that requires the world to come together, especially researchers. So I have prepared a presentation to give you some ideas of the tools that are available for you to work with European partners. And I'm just going to introduce you to the EURAXES network, because I do feel this is a very important mechanism if you want to reach out and expand your network of collaborators. And then I will talk about the MSCA, which is a specific funding program that the European Commission or the European Union has available. And I think it will be interesting for you to look at as well. So just a few words about EURAXES. And as you've heard, this is the project that I'm representing here in Southeast Asia, but it is in fact a global network. It is an initiative that connects researchers across the globe with their counterparts in Europe. And the idea is to eradicate any barriers to the collaboration and the mobility of international research talent. So Euraxis is very much an online community. I have placed hyperlinks in my presentation slides, and I will be sharing them with the organizers today so that you also have access to them later on. But so you don't need to take notes, and you can kind of look at some of the information that I'm providing at your own leisure later on. So Euraxis is really a one-stop information tool that gives you information about what is happening in Europe. It gives a long list of opportunities for you to perhaps advance your research career in Europe with a fellowship or with a particular job offer. It's a networking tool, as you've seen in the first slide. It really connects the research communities across the globe with each other. There's a lot of career development support available online. And we as Euraxis ASEAN, based here in Southeast Asia, also offer specific support. I've seen some of you have very specific questions on some projects that you have in mind. And for this, we are available. So the information that's available on that website is very much, who offers research opportunities in the field that you might be interested in, what type of funding is available, how can you move, and it combines the information of all those countries that are part of the Euraxis initiative. These are 42 European countries, so it's not just the members of the political entity European Union, but also those countries that are associated with the so-called European research area, and it's our global partners. So besides Southeast Asia, Euraxis is present in China, in India, in Japan, in North America. We've just opened an office in Africa, altogether 9 hubs, and you find information on those destinations on the portal. As I've said, this is probably very important to you that are thinking about staying in research, but also for you that are looking to maybe join forces with non-academic partners. So we combine a network not just of academic partners, but also of industry players that are also hosting their opportunities on our jobs and funding portal. There's a partnering tool, again, if you're looking for European partners for a joint project, a very useful instrument, especially if you're just starting out in your career. And there's a hosting database as well. If you're looking perhaps to do a PhD or a postdoc in Europe, then you will find offers from European institutions that have these places available. I've already mentioned career development. It's really at the core of this initiative. And it covers all aspects of a researcher's career development, from how to write a good proposal all the way to how do I make the transition from academia to industry, for example. So just I invite you to make use of these online tools that are available. Euraxis ASEAN is in the region, as I've said. I am myself, I'm based in Singapore. I have one colleague, she is based in the Philippines, and you can always contact us if you'd like to have more specific information. I've jumped this here. I wanted to just showcase this to you because I think it's very relevant for the topic of the discussion today. We have an annual key event. It's our European Research and Innovation Days in ASEAN, and last year it was focused on science diplomacy, climate change, and global health. We had, I think, over 40 sessions discussing the relationship between Europe and ASEAN in addressing some of these challenges. If you haven't been able to join us, you can watch it again here. And maybe for your calendar, the 2022 edition will take place on the 3rd of November. This time we're looking at digitalization and artificial intelligence. Now, as I announced at the beginning, I wanted to introduce you to some very specific funding opportunities because they are very relevant for those of you that are interested in green transition and climate change actions. The program that I'm referring to are the so-called Marie Skłodowska career actions. You can find them here on the left-hand side. And I'm sure you as students of public policy know this already, but this is part of the much wider European Union framework program for science, research and innovation. That's the name. It's currently called Horizon Europe, and the MSCA are just one part of the kind of very vast number of opportunities that are available for research and scientific collaboration with Europe. The MSc are very much focused on skills development, career development of researchers. There are various actions that are part of this program, and today I'm going to focus on how to do a PhD as part of an MSCA and how to do postdoctoral research. It is very important. I just looked up the numbers. Under the previous project cycle, the Commission committed 723 million euros to MSCA-funded projects that were contributing to the Green Deal calls, and that translates to 3,000 researchers that were funded by the MSCA to do research related to the Green Deal goals. This is a program that's not new. It's been around for over 20 years, and you can see, of course, ASEAN countries have always benefited from it. We're probably particularly interested in Indonesia here, so the number of projects and the number of participations on the right-hand side. It's, as I said, an opportunity also for researchers of ASEAN nationalities to go and spend some time in Europe to either obtain a PhD or postdoc credentials, and ASEAN is a very strong participant in this particular program. So let's look at the doctoral networks. What are doctoral networks? They are basically consortia formed by a number of European research institutions that are training the next generation of experts in a particular field. It's a very unique opportunity. There are very often partners that form this consortium from the public and the private sector. So you as a PhD student on one of these networks, you would not just have the usual academic training by working in a university setting, but you would also have the opportunity to spend some time, for example, working with an industry partner or a non-profit organization. Where can you find these programs? These doctoral networks are really spread out all over the European research area. So not just the EU member states, but also, as I mentioned at the beginning, the countries that are associated with the European research area. The UK is in brackets right now because the situation of their association is currently in flux. It is an extremely well-funded program. A PhD student in a MSCA doctoral network really doesn't have to worry about their bills. They can really focus on their education. There's a mobility allowance and also a family allowance included in this. And if this is of interest to you, those positions are advertised on the Euraxis jobs and funding portal that I introduced at the beginning of my presentation. The application is very similar to applying for a job role. There'll be a specific number of criteria that the applicants have to fulfill. As I already said, this is where you find the listings. This is what it would look like. This is what the jobs and funding portal looks like online. There's a dedicated subsection, Marie Skłodowska career actions, related opportunities. Now, the second MSCA action that I would like to introduce you to are these so-called postdoc fellowships. This is very interesting. The call for 2022 is going to open on the 12th of May with a deadline in mid-September. So it's the perfect timing for those of you that are already holding a PhD and looking to further your education, this is the perfect time now to start your preparations. It is also a very important fellowship because it works in both ways. So I know some of you are faculty members here. This is a fellowship. There's two elements to it. The European Postdoctoral Fellowship is for example, researchers based in Indonesia or anywhere else in ASEAN that want to go to Europe to spend their fellowship time there. But there's also the global dimension to this, which is an opportunity for institutions, for example, in Indonesia to host an MSCA fellow at their institution in Indonesia, for example, and this person comes with their own funding. So it's a fantastic opportunity to get connected to partners. This is, as I said, the call dates. It has a budget of 275 million euros. I think that translates to around 1,800 individuals that will receive funding under this call. And maybe just to summarize, this is a personal fellowship. So this is not for a group of researchers to apply or for an institution. This is meant to individual researchers that want to spend up to 2 years in Europe to obtain scientific expertise in their specific field. It is open to all nationalities, and it is also open to all domains of research. It's based on the principle of bottom-up, which means there are no predefined areas where the Commission is expecting applications, but it's really up to you as the applicant to come up with the great idea. The eligibility criteria are that you need to have a PhD at the time of your of the deadline, which is 14th of September, and you must not have more than 8 years of postdoctoral research experience. If there are some here in the group that have applied to the 2020-1021 call, you must have received a score of more than 70% to apply to the 2022 call. What is very important is this is a joint application. So it's the key step for anyone who thinks this is interesting would be to find a host institution, a supervisor in Europe right now, and then to jointly develop a strong proposal that you then submit for this call. This European host can be either a public or a private sector research actor. So it can be a university, but it can also be a research institute, and it can also be a company where you can carry out your research. If you're doing applied research, then of course it would make sense for you to be hosted by a company in Europe. It's also not just possible, but very much encouraged to build in secondments in your proposal. So you could start out with an institution, a European university, and then you say part of your fellowship you'll spend at company XYZ to complete your postdoc. This is just some very quick information. Once again, this is a very, very generous fellowship. It again has some built-in money for mobility and also a family allowance. If you have a spouse, you don't need to be married to them, by the way, it has to be your life partner. And to let me emphasize this again, if you as an institution in Indonesia want to host a European fellow, they come with this package as well. So you would not have any costs at your end. This is the timeline. So you would hear by February next year whether or not you've been successful, and you could start your fellowship already by March 2023, but the funder is very flexible. You have up to 12 months to postpone this. If, for example, you have to finish something up at your own institution and you cannot go immediately, you have time of up to 12 months to defer the start of the fellowship. How would you get started? First point of call, once again, the Euraccess portal to find hosting offers. This, I have to emphasize, is a highly prestigious fellowship. So European universities are currently all on high alert, trying to reach out to the best global talent to win them as applicants for this particular fellowship, and the EURAXES portal has a dedicated subsection to MSCA hosting office. Now, I said again, there is an opportunity for European fellows that want to perhaps come to Indonesia. I want to emphasize this because it is, to my great pain, very much underused. We have far too few Europeans that are coming to Indonesia or other parts of ASEAN to do their research here. I'm not going to go through this in great detail. Again, I'll share the slides later on, but this is open to the same eligibility criteria apply. So this is open to nationals of the EU member states or associated countries or long-term residents. So even, for example, an Indonesian who's been living in France for 12 years, they would also be eligible to go out back to Indonesia, for example, under this fellowship. Here I added some information for you on the submission and the evaluation, which again you can look at later on. Just maybe here just to zoom in on the evaluation criteria. Of course, excellence is very important. This refers, of course, to the uniqueness of the proposal that you're submitting, and it doesn't mean you have to be the next Einstein, but it has to be something that drives, of course, the field, and you're making a major contribution to the scientific area that you're working in. Impact refers also to your communication strategy. The European Commission is very much focusing on open science, open access. So this also relates to how in your proposal you have a very clear strategy on how the output of your research will be disseminated beyond your immediate scientific network, but also to the public at large. And then, of course, quality and efficiency of the implementation. I think to you as academics, I don't need to explain that. What I'd like to focus on is EURAXES ASEAN. This is Jenny and myself. Of course, this is top of our agenda this year. We have already planned a number of events that you might like to attend. On the 4th of May, we will have an information session introducing this year's call. On the 11th of May, we will have a training session, how to draft an effective proposal for an MSCA postdoc fellowship. And then later in May, we will actually have matchmaking masterclasses, which means we have invited European institutions with hosting offers to join us via Zoom and to match them with potential applicants from the region. If that's of interest to you, please do follow us on Facebook and on Twitter, where we'll be announcing the registration details in the next couple of weeks. And of course, there's lots and lots of additional online information that you may want to consult for further information on these particular fellowship opportunities. Now I'm stop sharing here. As I said at the beginning, I will share the slides with the organizers of the session today, and they will hopefully share it with all of you. All the links are in the document already, so you can at your own leisure time look at it. And Jenny and myself are always available, of course, to consult you for your specific cases and the specific questions that you may have. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Dr. Susan. That's comprehensive. I believe we've received few questions, but along the way, as you explained, some of them are already answered. But I'm still going to ask you a few questions that are yet to be answered. So I suppose you're ready for the next questions. Yeah, are we good?
Of course, no problem. Yes.
Okay. So the first question, it will be, it's a unanimous sender. So any tips for young aspiring PhD researcher on how to build a strong research portfolio based on your experience? That's the first question I have for you.
So a young researcher that wants to build a research
portfolio.
Well, of course, international collaboration is very important. My first advice would be, and I'm not saying that for self-promotion really, but my first advice would be to join the Euraccess ASEAN community. This is really a really great platform, not just for collaboration with European partners, but we're very much focusing also on intra-ASEAN collaboration. So we've built, for example, a scientific network where we have some form of mentoring in place, where junior researchers can consult more senior peers and get advice from them on how to go about, for example, building an international research network. But we as Euraccess ASEAN have a career development series, which has been running for the past 2 years. We cover a lot of very important information, I think, especially for junior researchers, how to write a proposal, how to get published, how to not get duped by predatory journals. For example, we have a very strong relationship with Taylor and Francis, who are working with us on that. I will put in the slides a link to our YouTube channel where you can find recordings to all our training sessions. This year, we will start our training series in March. The first one will be how to write a strong PhD proposal. Then we'll look at how to build an international research partnership. And our third one, which is planned for April, is how to make a transition from academia to industry. So my first advice, again, would be maybe to reach out to us, and you can get connected to other researchers here in the region and join some of the very lively debates and discussions groups that we have, and get mentoring from the peers in the group on how to make sure that your career is a successful one.
Okay, thank you, Doctor. So yeah, collaboration is the key for those asking, because I believe I'm still receiving a few questions that has the similar understanding to myself, which is collaboration. Next question, then Dr. Susan. My second question comes from Iwa. She has 2 series of questions, but you've answered the first part of the question already. So the second part of the question will be, yes, there'll be research and there'll be a paper file, or there'll be a program file. How far will the EU or the program be involved in the application or the implementation of the policy?
Sorry, I don't think I understand the question. Does this refer to the fellowships that I've just presented?
The first one, yes. The second one, not sure. Let me rephrase the question. The question is, how far will the fellowship be involved in the application of the research?
How far will the fellowship be involved in the application of the research? Well, if that refers to the topic that the
implementation,
the applicant chooses, maybe it refers to international intellectual property right. I'm not entirely sure what the person means. Maybe the research output and what the researcher can do with this. This, of course, once you obtain a postdoctoral fellowship, you sign a contract with your supervisor, with your host institution in Europe, and then it is up to you as the both contractual partners, the beneficiaries of the fellowship, to discuss, what you're going to do with the research, in which direction it should go, how the application of any research output should look like. The commission then is no longer involved. It is then a discussion between the fellow and the European institution that is hosting the fellow, so the supervisor. So in that sense, you have total flexibility, and it's really up to the 2 beneficiaries to discuss the details of that.
Okay. So thank you, Doctor. I believe we still have time for more questions. Yes, we do. So this question is a bit more broader, and I think will require some further explanation. The question comes from a unanimous sender. Some areas in Indonesia has shrinkage because of sea abrasion. What kind of research and collaboration opportunity that EU has to offer for this sort of issues that are happening?
Yeah, so this is a very specific question. I mean, this is a phenomenon, I guess, that is not unique to Indonesia, but of course, erosion, I guess, is what's meant here, affects other parts of the world. Perhaps if I go back to my presentation just for a second, and I showed you at the beginning, just go back here. I showed you at the beginning that the MSCA, here is the slide that I was looking at. The MSCA, oops. Can you see my slides?
Yes.
Can you? Okay, there you go. So the MSCA is part of the wider program called Horizon Europe. And as I said, this is the European Union's framework program for research, science and innovation. It runs over a period of 7 years. And it has a total budget of just under 100 billion euros. This program is divided into 3 pillars. So what I have just been presenting this morning was the excellence pillar, pillar 1, specifically the Marie Skłodowska career actions, which are focusing on the career development of individual researchers. I think the person is asking about the opportunity for research collaboration with European partners to work in the form of a consortium. This is covered under pillar 2. So pillar 2 is where we find these kind of thematic focus areas, and it would probably climate, energy and mobility would probably be the thematic field where that particular issue is covered. The Commission is putting out so-called work programs every year. So currently we are in the middle of work program 21-22. And in this work program, you would find calls for funding to build international research consortia to tackle very specific questions. So the question of landslides, erosions, and perhaps I'm not understanding it correctly, but the topic that you're interested in, there will be calls that are addressing those specific topics. The very good news for Indonesia is that Indonesian research institutions are not only invited to participate, but they're also fully funded under Horizon Europe. This is not the case for all international partners, but for Indonesia, this is the case. So you can, as for example, an institution, your research group based at an Indonesian university could try and join a European consortium that is applying for funding to address that specific issue. Now, your next question will probably be, how do I find out what calls are available? I'm just going to tell you this, but don't get confused. I will make sure to add a slide in the presentation. All the calls are published on the so-called funding and tender portal. This is where the European Commission puts out all the funding opportunities, not just under Horizon Europe, but all the other programs that they're running. For example, Erasmus+, you may be familiar with that. So I will make sure to send you in the presentation a slide to just give you some instructions of how, where you can look for calls, where you could join a European consortium to address some of these challenges. But maybe just to summarize, there is funding available. This would be not for an individual. This would be for a research entity in Indonesia to join a European consortium. So there'll be a number of research entities that are together receiving funding from the European Commission to address a particular challenge, and the subject that you're interested in is very likely also covered under one of these calls.
Yes, doctor. I believe it's back to me then. Okay. From, I think we have time for one more question. A lot of the questions are on technical basis, and you will address those questions from a follow-up slide. So students can research and follow through the questions from the link available. Last question, also from a unanimous sender. From all these research and programs, we understand that there's 3 pillars, but what are the priority areas that the EU is specifically interested in? I mean, what has a top agenda this subject that you would share?
The Commission has in Horizon Europe, just drawing this up myself, if you give me a second.
Sure, take your time.
The Commission has, in drawing up, as I said, this is a 7-year program. This is a 7-year program. The Commission has identified certain missions to kind of, in a way, focus research on areas where there, of course, there is special relevance for the European community. I mean, this is public funding. This is, of course, always trying to address challenges that are relevant to the people that live in Europe. But as I'm sure the ambassador also said in his presentations, a lot of these challenges are global challenges. So the missions that have been identified are basically, just give me a second here. What else? The 5 missions are adaptation to climate change. The second mission is cancer research. This has really been put on the forefront of the research agenda for the next couple of years. To restore oceans and waters by 2030. Climate neutrality in smart cities, and transition towards sustainable agriculture. So these are the 5 missions that where there is a specific focus, if you want, in the Horizon Europe framework program. But again, there are really all scientific areas that are covered in the framework program. But if you want to say there's a certain focus, then these would be the missions would be what you would look at for some guidance.
Okay, thank you, Doctor. I believe we have covered the question has been asked, and yes, for those who's interested, all the technical question that's coming in, the details will be presented and explained through the link and the material Dr. Susan is sharing. The organizer, SGBP and EU, will share it to you guys. Have a look to it. Those are some technical questions you've addressed. I believe the link and the material will help you answer those questions. So, before I let you go, Doctor, like Mr. Ambassador, we'll need a group pictures. And then there'll be a small announcement for me to the other audience.
Okay.
So can we all, as before, turn on our camera, do some smile. Yeah, I think everybody camera is on. One more is still not. So show us your beautiful smile. It's been a slightly gloomy day in Jakarta here, but let's keep the smile going. There you go. Okay. 3, 2, 1. Thank you. Let's wait for the next group. We still got 100 over audiences, so it'll take time. Okay, done. Yeah, we are done. Doctor, thank you very much for the half hour or so brief presentation. I believe there'll be more information available on the sites, on the website. There'll be linked to Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, and there's a lot of question asking. So do remind the team member. There'll be follow-up questions regarding the programs they're interested. I've received, I can't count them, that's quite a lot of enthusiastic questions. So we thank you for your time.
Thank you, Israel. Thank you. It was a pleasure to speak. And I just wanted to add something. We've just created a specific LinkedIn group for requests for research collaboration with European partners. So this would probably, for the junior researcher who was asking the question on how to build their career, that would be a great opportunity. There's already 400 members on that site, so it'd be good to expand your network by using that. But please do all follow us on our social media accounts for all the events that we're hosting for you. So thank you so much.
Thank you, Dr. Susan. So I'll take the floor back from you. There'll be additional announcement for everybody. We invite the audience to share your moments, key takeaway from today's session on social media. Please tag us uni_Europe and SGPP social media channels. So we are available on Facebook, we are available on Twitter. Catch us there. We are available on Instagram. So yeah, please do catch us there. We are more than happy to find out your feedbacks, key takes away, inputs for future events. We welcome all those feedbacks. So I shall wait for all the tweets and Instagram messages and Instagram videos that you have regarding the key takeaways from today's session. For the organizer, should we wrap up? Or I believe there should be an announcement.
Halo teman-teman, saya seringkali ditanya di sosmed. Saya ingin ikut berkontribusi untuk Indonesia yang lebih keren di 2045. Baiknya mulai dari mana? Mungkin salah satu saran saya yaitu belajar public policy. Nah, pemahaman terhadap analisis kebijakan itu memungkinkan kita untuk mengaktualisasikan solusi untuk berbagai permasalahan, apalagi yang sifatnya struktural. Tidak hanya di pemerintahan, tapi juga di dunia usaha maupun non-profit. Mantan Sekjen PBB Ban Ki-moon, Perdana Menteri Singapura Lee Hsien Loong, dan jurnalis Rachel Maddow, semuanya adalah lulusan jurusan Public Policy. SGPP Indonesia, sekolah Public Policy pertama di Indonesia dengan bahasa pengantar bahasa Inggris, sedang membuka penerimaan mahasiswa untuk batch terbaru. Untuk detail mengenai program dan cara mendaftar, atau sekedar berkonsultasi mengenai rencana karir teman-teman ke depan, hubungi SGPP Indonesia melalui link yang ada di deskripsi. Now back to the show. Halo teman-teman.
Last two topics from me adalah untuk SGPP sendiri, program intake-nya round 5, deadline-nya itu akan ada tanggal 5 Maret. So teman-teman, ini sudah tanggal 23, kalian punya 1 minggu lebih sedikit for the admissions. Or bahkan jika ingin bertanya langsung, send your email ke admission@sgpp.ac.id, or bisa hubungi langsung untuk konsultasi karir dan sebagainya di +62 811 1522 504. Details ini juga available di social media platform kita, so feel free untuk ke sana tanya-tanya. Find your curiosity. Diriku understand that public policy masih sesuatu yang sangat baru, so we welcome questions untuk membantu answer itu. So, last session will be announcement untuk pemenangnya. So, dari semua pertanyaan, best questions yang telah kita terima, dan ini banyak sekali questionnya, I understand karena time constraint tidak semua bisa ditanyakan, tapi tetap kita nilai dari sisi potential of questions-nya. So, winner number 1, ini ke Pak Fahre Zailam. Pertanyaannya adalah, as a member of the public, what can I do to support EU-Indonesia environmental initiatives? Dan yang berikutnya adalah second winner, yaitu dari Pak Reza Fadil. What are the strategic steps between EU and Indonesia to overcome the threats of climate change? So those are the 2 winner questions. Congratulations to the winner. The host team will contact you guys separately. So feel free to exercise all those details because the gift will be sent to you personally. I believe we have summarizes all the events today. We got Mr. Ambassador Pak Vincent, who have shared all the key goals. I believe the takeaway points are mutual and consensus understanding of global and climate. So it's also our duty to promote green movement from ourselves to our fellow friends, to our school, to our colleagues around ourselves. And the last will be from Dr. Susan, some very, very enticing promotional activities, scholarships, I mean, a fully funded scholarship opportunities paid for, which includes tuition fee. You can bring your partner, spouse, family, they're all paid about. So those are a moment key takeaways. We will be sending you more links, more presentations, so you can summarize, read more further for your postdoctoral. And last but not the least, we will have a survey. Survey is going to be done on the screen. You can just scan it. We would like to know how we perform, and so we can improve for future calls and chats, because there will be more of these events. Thank you very much, Bapak Ibu. Have a pleasant day. Do take care and stay safe. Ini link survei yang dimaksud. Feel free to scan it dan isi langsung according to your feedbacks. Thank you.